Hey everybody, welcome. We are going live today, and I just want to post up what we're going to be talking about so you guys can see it. Tonight we're going to have a guest on. Tonight is Divergent Druidism, and in Divergent Druidism we talk about things that are anathema to many people today. And we're going to be bringing on a guest. We are with Marcos Marte, 30 years of age, who majored in the study of bioethics. He was a former New Jersey State Assembly candidate and is an active New Jersey Youth Conservative ambassador. And so we're going to be bringing him on today, and we're going to talk, and he's ready to come on. Let me just post this up real fast. Before we begin, I'll be right. I'm going to get that, Marcus, in just a second. Just want to let you guys know, please, any questions you have, put them in the comments, and please be respectful. The other thing is, as well as, that I am and come to you as Druid Nicholas Clan, founder of the Druid Circle, founder of the Druid Order of Blessed Stone and Wood, a conservative Druid order, Druid University to come, and Druid Living, a conservative pagan media outlet. So let's, without any further ado, bring on Marcos. And I'm going to go ahead. He has requested to come and accept and add. Here we go. He should be on any second. Give us just a sec. It takes Facebook a little time. It does say adding, so I know he's going to be coming on. There we go. Marcos, you got to
Hello.
turn. You got to turn.
I do have it turned. I'm not sure why it's locked to have it.
Oh, you know what? Do you have your you could, if you want, you could actually be, you could be you could turn it. Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Just like, now, there we go, right there. Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Perfect. Yep. Excellent. So I just introduced you. Tell us a little bit about who is Marcos Di Marte.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me fine?
I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. Let me just make this a little bit louder so I can hear you. Go ahead.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Let me just 1 moment. I'm just trying to make sure this camera angle is fine. You can still hear me?
Perfectly.
Great. Yes.
And we're great. So we can see each other. That's good. Yep. Go ahead.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Marcos Marte. Formerly, I was a candidate for the New Jersey Republican Party in the 33rd District, which was formerly represented by Jersey City, Weehawken, Hoboken, and parts of Bayonne in New Jersey, up in the northern eastern section closest to Manhattan and New York. Currently, I work in finance. I was able to graduate from Montclair State University as a major in bioethics or medical humanities. But yes, I am on a passionate path towards conservatism and its value system, enhancing that inside of the Republican Party in New Jersey as an establishment and a political system that will actually work for and with the people that live inside of its borders. And yes, just trying to champion those ideas and that ideology across my age range so that we can actually take power inside of our borders and also, make the changes that are going to impact many of our lives going forward. But yeah, it's a little bit of myself. Spiritually, I do personally testify as a Christian. I adhere to most of its commandments and its teachings and doctrine and dogma. But it has not been an easy path. I'm very eclectic in my collection and understanding of different ideologies, cultures, and religious viewpoints and ways of thought and doctrines. So my path towards my belief in Christianity has been mostly built upon the foundation of history and the gathering of knowledge and empowering ourselves and being open. Because again, dogmatic principles They serve the same benefit. All gods serve a purpose, and the way that people understand that and make it and allow it to influence their life, mostly has a good outlook and a good turnout. So we're
We
trying to
we
champion that right along your side.
we usually refer to, we say usually the God or gods of your understanding. So it kind of unites everybody, because our job isn't to tell you who to believe in, what to believe in, or the many gods to believe in. We sort of leave that up to the individual. And I wanted to say, you brought up a good point, that in this idea of conservat conservatism, and I usually say conservatism, but conservatism actually goes beyond anything we can um, we can actually make tangible. It's more of a call to say, I am tired of this, I guess, leftism, this woke ideology. And it's hard because it's even hard to define what woke is. But I just call it insanity. And so maybe we could talk first a little bit about what we think maybe leftism is, what wokeism is, and its attack on things that are traditional, on things that that have order, and things that we can actually make sense of, and things that are actually sane, that we have been taught for years and centuries and millennia, that there is a natural order to things, and that this wokeism, this leftism, is disrupting the natural order of things. Can you talk a little bit about that first?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again, Druid. So, I mean, in my search of that same ruling and like that hierarchy or that term of rules that I have set across in my life and like understanding of different religious doctrines that set those purposes for, also the principles that come from philosophy as well, and understanding and seeking of knowledge and truth. Um, and I feel that the leftist movement that we see now, that is led by many of these ideas that come from communist, socialist sets of framework and foundation, is what's driving this current political system and common sense of understanding and critical thinking in the direction that it is, degrading all of the foundations that were won over by sacrifice of blood, sweat, and tears, and um, much push back towards established frameworks that actually bring us to the 274th birthday of America tomorrow. So those sets of ideals, again, that define the other side, what you and I are fighting for, Druid, I think first belongs to a book that I actually have from Immanuel Kant. I very much so as well enjoy Stoic poetry, philosophy, just in the sense that it reformats us and reprograms us to know that we have limits and we are human, and we still have a way, especially through learning through sacrifice, that many things are achievable if you don't look back and you just keep your head forward and straight up on. But that points me out to Immanuel Kant and his book, The Groundwork of the Metaphysic and of Morals. So no matter what spirituality or doctrine that you adhere to, there is a set code of morals, a defined system of what's right and wrong. And that is what would save us from this leftist ideology as compared to what is mostly enunciated as well as the far right ideology, where we can utilize our common sense, utilize pure principles of natural order, and also those set before us in example in folklore, or religious historical backing, that can regenerate us and redefine what the leftist movement is doing to us. Now, how do I define the leftist movement? Not only within the takeover and the invasive movement upon our republic at this point, where they are, it's just like the book 1984 by George Orwell. They're redefining our terms. They're trying to advocate for things that are actually, they just don't make sense. I was actually pointed back to, when doing some research about John Jacques Rousseau. He actually wrote, I think it was published in the late 1500s, The Social Construct, the principles of the political right. So that was a midst of the French Revolution and things like that, where he actually proclaimed that only the people who are sovereign have the all-powerful right to create and construct their area and their constitution and their governing body. But to bring us to that, I had a note, just one moment. There was actually something very interesting that was written by James Madison in the Federalist paper, where basically if we are redefining terms and giving way to, how can I say? The incorporeal. I'm sorry, I found it. So the term incorporeal substance, actually a new term that I've learned today, that was pointed out to me by John Jacques Rousseau, is the incorporated substance. So that is actually something that has no material form or physical form.
So
in layman's terms, empty promises.
Non-corporeal.
Right. Yes. So we're being fed things by the governing body and the most influential political party, with access to messaging towards the public, and also has won over a certain set of our public with exactly that non-corporeal terminology and problems that don't exist. And that's how they sucker you in. They give you redefined terms, and they make you hate the opposition. And that's where we find ourselves today, where opposite of the times in JFK in the early 60s, where there was a middle America where bipartisanship truly could exist and governing bodies could coexist. But now we find ourselves at a complete redlining division in America, where ideas, again, they're not common ground ideas, they are separatist ideas, and the combat is taking place academically and with the reintroduction and redefinition of our terms.
I want to bring up a point. You could tell me if you think I'm on point, maybe not so much, but if we go back to say the early Celts and the Roman Empire, and we focus a little bit more on the Roman Empire and their tactics, I think we find that the Roman Empire, while they loved order and structure, they enjoyed disrupting order and structure among many peoples, and that's basically how they conquered them, right? They conquered them by an ideology, by attacking, quote unquote, these tribes, these pre-Christian tribes, gods. So they would want their gods basically to say, you know what, our gods are actually stronger than your gods. And then it became a gods against gods kind of war. But in essence, if you really think of it and you look at the history and you look at their tactics, their disruption, their ability to, their ability to take out traditions and cultures of thousands and thousands and thousands of years. When you start looking at stuff like that and you start thinking about that, I think it's somewhat demonic, if you will, of the left. I use left versus liberal a lot because I don't see liberals in the same category as, say, leftists. These are people who are really pushing an agenda that is clearly demonized. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely agreed upon. Even historically, predating the expansion of the Catholic Church, you see even in the stories and the foretellings towards the Christian discipleship, that they would be persecuted. That's something that they knew would happen immediately after Jesus' death. And it came to be so in ways that were more violent than could ever be imaginable. And all of this for purely political motivation and consummation of power, and just basically seeking to destroy and conquer. They had leaders who subverted away from the knowledgeable teachings of that experience of that time, and they went on to destroy, pillage, and rewrite history. So those are things that, again, the root of the satanic doctrine, or that form of belief, as you have mentioned as well, is basically just lying, deception, leading astray, moving towards individualism and self-serving qualities. And that is exactly what has happened up until today, where a large consumption of people of this earth are misconceptualizing their proper purpose and what they mean to the world in natural order. And we see the subversion again that drips into the United States and Western culture, where these ideologies of self-serving and just egotistical qualities and characteristics are rising. And again, it's coming from the same voices. All of them are connected and easy and available for vision, or like for you to comprehend. But a lot of people that are in Western culture are too busy with their, again, individualistic life cycle, that they don't stop and think about thy neighbor. They don't stop to think about critical reasons as to why we are in a situation that we're in, and seeking that simple solution, which is adhering to some sort of spiritual experience that is going to teach you that you have a higher purpose, that elevates you to a joy or to a level of happiness, or how can I say, the satisfaction, I don't want to misconstrue as happiness, but you have to be able to understand that the place that you are, you have a purpose, whether it's to struggle and sacrifice things for the momentary timing, and then to rejoice the blessings that we all have. So I think that the left and the socialist movement, again, just with betrayal and giving power to the individual, even children, is very, very damaging, because we are much stronger united than set aside individually.
And that's pretty powerful. One of the things I want to say about this is that, I don't ever know a time, like, we talk about the Roman Empire and we talk about, their tactics, and we saw a lot of that come, quote unquote, the summer of love, the year before, 46 was elected. The summer before that, it really was chaos, right? Absolute chaos. In fact, if you think about it, Chaz, that quote unquote city, I think they built in Seattle, if I'm correct, right? I'm almost sure it was Seattle. I'm unsure, but Chaz,
100%.
am I correct?
Yeah.
It was, yeah, right? So Chaz, if you break it down, is chaos. So chaos and Chaz are basically stemming from the same linguistic root. So I think that they really did seek this to make everything chaos, to turn everything upside down on its ass, and to really say, we're going to shock these as John, one of our druids,
peaceful.
Is on. He said, mostly peaceful, right? And so when you hear comments like that, and you look at things, and they're even saying on these mainstream media outlets that, you know, they are mostly peaceful when there's like bombs going off in the background and fires and people pulling down set, mostly peaceful. You know, so this is what they seek, right? They seek to destroy peace. They they seek to destroy happiness. And and that's what we're about. We're about the pursuit of happiness. And happiness comes when you're able to say to yourself, I can leave this agenda. I can leave this, what we call the left plantation, which is basically, you know, people who sometimes, even like me, were afraid to leave. We were afraid to leave because of what would happen to us. And one day I woke up and I said, I can't take this anymore. And I'll never forget, I want to bring up a story. When I led the transgender march, I was a complete leftist, right? During the Bernie Sanders years in 2015, leading some of the biggest marches here in Philadelphia. Of course, the march on the DNC with 20,000 people we had. Um, I was actually I the two things really moved me to leave. Number one was the idea of the trans march that came, and this idea that they wanted to, there was a free speech bus that came along, and they bombed it. They bombed this free speech bus with Molotov cocktails. And so I'm like, wow. And then there was other times where I would go to an anti-cop rally, and they would say, you know, pigs in a blanket, burn them like, you know, fry them like bacon. And these
That
sorts of
happens.
things are what caused this like nausea in me, you know. And I was thinking about times where, you know, I did maybe an exorcism in a family's home, you know, to eradicate whatever upsetment was there. And it was the same exact feeling spiritually, you know, non-corporeally, incorporeally, and at the same time physically. So it really is disturbing. And and then when you want to leave, you can't because they intimidate you in staying. It's like crabs in a barrel, where you have all these crabs trying to get out. And every time one crab is just about to get out, the rest pull it back down. You see, so the difficulty of I'm assuming, and I'm sure you know, how many people want to leave this ideology and feel they can't because there's no voices for them out there. But yet, I think more and more people are coming over to conservatism by nature, not by force.
Oh, I absolutely, most definitely agree. I see it happening across most of the administrative field, especially, um, because it's affecting businesses at this point in time. Not only small businesses, but large businesses, and it's affecting each household with our consumption now of energy and food. So it has a direct correlation with everything we're going with in our lifetime right now. Excuse me, just charging the phone. Repositioning here.
Take your time. Take your time. Go ahead.
But yes, it's really terrible. So I think naturally, and we actually I had shared a personally I shared a Gallup reporting, one of the biggest survey and polling agents in the United States, Gallup. They do reports and survey across a consortium of ideas, and they test and wage where the mindset of the country is on certain topics. So they actually find that social conservatism is unparalleled in its gain and its adhesion at this point in time of people that it's attracting in the last 5 decades. So that's something very good where people are actually realizing if it's undercover or at least they are not being represented is a different story. But there are many people who are now seeing the effects of the summer of love and other of its derivatives in our change in our legislature. which is now pushing them away. But I think that the job that's left undone at this point in time is rescuing our youth, because technology is advancing at such a pace where they are not able to really take in what the moral necessity of our times are, and also how to put that forward and actually partake in our system. Because most teens do not know this because they're not shown or educated enough. But at the age of 18, there is so much power, funding, money, and opportunity inside politics. Not only politics, but also in any field in which they hold regard, especially in the creation of small business and entrepreneurship. With the right mindset and networking strategy, anything is possible. But I do see that many of, even in the FBI, what we see is going on in the last couple of months, and the political utilization of our governing agencies, we see a lot of people blowing the whistle, as we say, who are taking a stand against the instrumental use of these agencies who are supposed to serve the people, which instead are being pointed a gun and being attacked by those that are supposed to serve us. So I think those qualities, again, is cyclical. As they say, weak men create strong men, or create strong times, which create strong men, create weak times. We're at that turning point once again in our timeline of humanity, where we absolutely need more people to take that work, take the accountability to learn the actual truth, to seek the truth, and to hold those that are lying and causing these forms of chaos, and holding them accountable against the law in the highest degree. But yeah, many stories that we could share with each other, especially even with the first month of the year and the sixth day. I was supposed to be there that day, and I had much trouble finding and arranging accommodations to travel. So I decided to stay back and watch history unfold. And I was very excited to see the Senate and the Congress hold their hearings and hear the contesting arguments from the 7 states that had very ironic um, results. But at that point in time, chaos ensued once over, as did in Philadelphia many times. So again, we see this working agent. We see it. We see the solvent. I think it should be quite clear to America what is causing all of this, and we have to take a stand against it. But I think that what's mostly chilling is that persons like you and I, many of us that are conservatively aligned with or reawoken towards, that have been advocating for this for years. Um, we've been ignored, we've been cast aside, we've been canceled, yet our message remains the same. And the repercussions of not listening to us and not taking in the knowledge that we're spreading, because that's all we offer. They fight against it because we're saying it louder sometimes, and they take that with the appeal of the media, which is driving a narrative against us, which is the lies, the constant misconstructions. When before 2018, when did we hear the word misinformation from before? We did not. Now that is a jargon that is used daily. Misinformed, misinformation. No, that's misinformation, because we have now the availability of technology at our fingertips to ask a search engine to now populate an answer. So when do we trust a computer and an algorithm more than we trust thy neighbor? So I think that's a part of the turning point that we're at right now, and hopefully people wise up before it's too late and actually take in some of our advice and our forewarnings, because we ever so drastically need that now, especially with the next coming election cycle.
We talked a little bit in the beginning, and we said that today we're going to try to define conservatism and patriotism. We already defined leftism and wokeism a little bit to try to kind of get that idea out. I know you had some books and things like that you wanted to quote out of, but at this point, maybe we could start moving now to say, because I'll be honest with you. when I left the left, I still considered myself a liberal. I didn't consider myself conservative, but it wasn't because I moved to conservatism. It was about that they actually moved so far away from me that able, I wasn't even in the reach. So that's what I'm talking about, this idea that we're not forced to be conservative. We're leaving on our own volition, on our own accord, and that today is true independence. So if you really want to talk about independence from England, we, the truest patriots, I think, are those who are leaving independently and able to say, enough of this. This is anti-American, and yeah, you find yourself in a place where you're like, oh my, I'm conservative, and then you're shocked. So what would you say to people out there? What does conservative mean today? What does it mean? What does conservatism mean today? And maybe if you wanted to quote some stuff out of your books that you had, I think that that would be good if you wanted to. However you want to answer the
Yeah,
question.
I actually wanted to open up, and it's again, it's very awesome that our what we're speaking of goes for our holiday tomorrow. So I actually want to quote from one of the signers from our Constitution, James Madison, where he says to the people of the state of New York in November 22 of 1787, and I quote, "The instability, injustice, and confusion introduced into the public councils have in truth been the mortal diseases under which popular governments have everywhere perished. As they continue to be the favorite and fruitful topics from which the adversaries to liberty derive their most specious declamations, the valuable improvements made by the American constitutions on the popular models, both ancient and modern, cannot certainly be too much admired." So going to say, just as you have defined, they understood that re-imaging and redistributing messaging can be the toxic kryptonite that will shatter any coming government.
Right.
And going back to our beginnings, what exactly was spoken about by the signers of our Constitution in the Federalist Papers and the arguments? What can we get from Plato and his instructions on running a republic? Because
Sure.
that's exactly what we are. And pointing out back to tomorrow again, we are seeing the immediate ramifications to where we are now defining America as a democracy. We escaped bondage and fought against the British Empire simply to misrepresentation of our taxation and a taxable monetary amount on the cost of tea and other goods. We fought a war, lost patriots, learned knowledge, all members of our founding group under the age of 30, men who set conquest and actually created the most everlasting empire the world has seen and country, which is truthfully a republic. So we understand the attacks that are coming into our system and how we're being defeated to a certain point from within. And again, I point out to John Jaquez Rousseau, who says, under these rulings and this literature that our founding fathers sought out for, that only the people who are sovereign have the all-powerful right to lead our country and its will. So until we seek unity, we will only be divided, because all of the defining terms, everything that creates or was and is the meaning of being conservatism, is being redefined and being positioned as evil and incorrect by those that as well give us the terms misinformation. So really, to define conservatism, I think it's mostly defined as keeping true and leading with legacy. So basically, that I entitle it like that to over encompass all of the values on keeping, because when we say conservatism, it should mean to conserve. It's not to limit, it's not to deter. It's to hold true to whichever culture you wish as an American individual inside of our established country and republic, that you may do whatever you wish to pursue your happiness as an individual who is indivisible of their traits under God, equal to any other. And we are losing sight of that because now we are creating protected groups who all have some form of signifying their identity and their participation in a select group, and that is the way that they're leading their lives. So people are looking to act as individuals, as part of a clique, instead of being an individual in a working entirely fluid system. And this, again, is a product of the redefinition of what it means to be an American at this point, where most people are so confused that they hate the country because things are being so polarized at this point in time. But yeah, just adding on to conservatism, it really takes, I guess, being put in a position of sacrifice, or being put in a position of really knowing what a family is, the nuclear family system, and having pride in what is behind you and what purpose you have in front of you. Those are the true properties and foundations of the conservatism that I define in my life, and I attempt to push forward in my life and teachings. But I think as well that has strayed far, far away from the Republican Party we have today at large.
You know, it's funny because you'll hear a lot of people say taxation is theft, and you know, that's really what, you know, our founding fathers fought against. You know, they fought against taxation, including sugar taxes. You know, there were taxes on sugar, right? So, I mean, look here in Philadelphia, we have a sugar tax. So, if you really want to think about what tyranny is, I always say follow the party. Follow the party. If that party would have been, you know, quote unquote, the party that thinks they're against tyranny is really the party that's for tyranny. They're a part of that party that want you to stay enslaved, want you to stay, you know, obedient, want you to stay, you know, with them so that they can get the numbers. And then they will then emit favors. And those favors that they give you, then you have to pay them back through a vote. So everything that's happening today, they're really trying just to get votes. And it's really not about that. I think, and then you said it again. You said this idea that there it's if you follow this thought, this quote unquote leftism, which is supposed to be so woke, so freeing, really isn't. It's putting one in chains. And I don't think for an instant that our founding fathers were for that, except the ones that really originally stood against the Declaration of Independence, and so, you know, who really wanted England, or were they just afraid to leave? You know, so that's really what a lot of them were up against back then. That moves us now into a talk on patriotism and how many of these leftist woke folk would say, you know, patriotism, you know, it's the patriarchy. It's, you know, and they're really good. Leftists are really good at language. They're really good at linguistics. And I listen to the language. You know, you brought up the word misinformation. Well, how many other words have they invented since then? Non-binary, trans, you know, I mean, I could think of 100 words like right now that they're inventing these new terms for, and then they aren't just teaching them at the university level. They're teaching, and indoctrinating people on hating America, that America is a racist place, that America is this place that hate gays. And as a person who is openly gay, like, we are the farthest from that. People come from Muslim countries because they're getting thrown off of rooftops because they're gay. You don't find that here in America. People, especially conservatives, are like, you know what? You want to live your life the way you want to live your life? Fine. Go do whatever you do. Do you, boo. You know, do you. But I would say that you don't find that in totalitarian countries. People are leaving them because they want to be American. They wave American flags. I've seen more American flags waved in ethnic circles than I do in American circles, because we are the ones being told things like being a man is bad. You know, I mean, these are radical thoughts, dangerous thoughts, and thoughts that want to penetrate our university system. I mean, our doctors, our lawyers today are all now joining forces with leftism, and it's all about this idea of uprooting whatever we found it here in this country in 1776, and they're against
No,
it. So patriotism is being looked at as a bad thing. How did this happen in just a few short years?
I think, again, if my personal opinion, this is just on my own behalf. I think much of this happened, especially, I believe I have an advantage as a third-year-old now in 2023, being born in later months of 1992. I was able to have a rich experience within the 90s and the uprise of technology. And I was able to see the downfall politically during the administrations of Barack Obama. Just not seeing, again, his rhetoric, his popularity, and his moral compass, which led him away of a lot of the virtuous, like, how can I say, just the wheels of America were not under great conduct under his administration. We were straying away from everything, which pushed me to believe that we were being infiltrated by the Muslim Brotherhood, um, sleeper cells, things like that. And that only became worse after he activated much of the propaganda arms, and he hired much of anti-American legislators and lobbying groups into his appointed select few, which have overtaken not only the governmental body of administration in this country, but also the academic uh, value system of our country and our Ivy League schools. And much of this is being sold. I'm going to continue on to certain points, which brings us back to what's happening and how our patriotism is being attacked and why it's becoming less essential to everyday Americans. But we have critically been infiltrated by those that hate us the most. They've infiltrated our educational systems, our financial systems, and our school of free thought in the media and entertainment, where now we are paying top dollar to be entertained, or top dollar for technology and tools that come from producers that are not from our own land. So many of these things that the left and its advocates and voters advocate for are actually estranged and foreign ideas. And these are the most damaging. And since they are being so well programmed that they are repeating and echoing these ideas, we're seeing the hatred and the vitriol inside of America grow. So again, this leads us towards the hatred of patriotism, what it means to be patriotic, and how that connects to conservatism. And if we're conserving the founding principles of America, conserving as to holding on to them and making sure we do not let go, and that means pushing forward with our line at certain points, just as our founding fathers did, with the precise timing, intelligence, and strategy to overcome a simple tax and to break away to have civil liberties. We have to be smart enough to unite to fight against that same form of tyranny. And we know more than ever we have the power to do so. But we have to find a way to silence the opposition's poisonous messaging and to work our gift of gab and to work with thy neighbor to find common ground and find solutions. So patriotism, again, is love of our country, love of our sovereignty, love of what we've become, what we've been through, and what we yet have to be. Connecting this to myself, I am a first-generation American, born here, lived in the state of New Jersey all my life. I'm very happy to have been so, but my parents have been here about 40 years from the Dominican Republic. And our country is extremely patriotic and extremely God-fearing, as to where we are the only country with the Bible in the middle of our crest on our flag. And we, as Dominicans, politically see the influence, the disinfluence, the bad influence of America purging with these ideological persuasions, now leading our culture away from the binary system of man and woman, with massive funding peddling and strategies being pushed to coerce our sovereignty and our constituency of a lie. And these are things that we see that are consequential and moving across the world. So we see, as you say, we follow the money, we follow the party, and we see where the influence comes from. And it's very conclusive with all of this information that we have at hand. Who is doing this and peddling these ideas? And we see that it is a globalist movement, it is a transhumanist movement. But in order for those movements to succeed, especially with the utilization now coming of AI, how do we control so many people at such quick pace in uniform? And their biggest obstacle is sovereignty in patriotism. And that's why we see it on such a high display of attack, such a high display of redefinition and isolation. Because that is the only thing holding this country and the world together before we are all just part of one system. And leading back to the scholasticism that I spoke of earlier, the academic inflation, just as a fresh graduate myself of a state-funded school in the state of New Jersey, it was absolutely disgusting. My, not so to say fear, but anxiety and disgust going into class 2 days a week, I would dread it because of the persecution of Christian values were so high. I took a course titled Death, Dying, and Afterlife, where we were investigating each religion or some popular culture's view of death, dying, and the afterlife, how they portrayed death before it happening to others, how people who were going through it portrayed it and messaged to others, and what they thought was the purpose of their afterlife, whether they went somewhere spiritually or if they belonged to nature. But every single time, ever so conveniently, that the professor had the ability to speak about Christianity, he pointed out to Western expansion and colonialism. So to say that this religion was carried out by the white man, westbound, killing and slaughtering everything in its way, completely ignoring all of the foundational teachings that I learned in grade school and middle school about the pilgrimage, about the Mayflower, about common trade with the Appalachian Indians, Western expansion with the great story of Lewis and Clark and Pocahontas, which became folk tale. But all of these things that make us American, the reason that we all sit at the table and break bread in Thanksgiving, is being degraded. And not many of us are able to stand up and fight for it, but those that do are silenced. And that's how we see that what James Madison told us in that letter is absolutely coming true. And that we, like the Founding Fathers, need to stand up now for our country more than ever and defend our republic. And again, it's really sad that all of these topics that we are talking about now, we cannot do very easily at short length, because each one of the points we've touched upon falls intertwined with each other. And the enemy is so deep into all of these social matters that now they have the power to turn the opposition off. And that's why, again, in the opposite end, we see populist movements like Donald Trump able to overcome unexpecting opponents like Hillary Rodham Clinton, who was so confident that led to her loss. And now we see the incompetence, a person that was in the basement, take over one of the most popular, once again, and most successful, logistically speaking, presidential administrations, taken back by the system, for the system, which is clear because since it's been taken by the system, since it was taken for the system, now, in the past 3 years, the people who it is supposed to reflect upon is failing. The system is still in place. It was just refunded with trillions of dollars that those same administrators complained about daily. And again, it's tyranny, it's globalist, it's transhumanist, and we have to stand up against it before we lose the entire reason why we call ourselves patriots.
One of the things I'd like to mention and just talk about, because this is really important, I think, this war we're in right now, and we are in a war, whether or not you want to say that we're in a spiritual warfare, or if it's spiritual warfare or not, or if it's something else. I use the word spiritual warfare. I mean, that's just me. It's easy for many people to, whatever you want to call it, right? But this is it's also physical warfare, physical attacks on our bodies, where they're killing babies, and in the last month, they're sort of degrading their own body by gender mutilation, and so these are things that they're doing. And when you talk about, they always call us what they actually are. They'll call us Nazis when they're the actual Nazis, right? And so they'll say, well, you're all Nazis, but they won't say why. We get it all the time, and I'm going to get into the Bible in just a second. But I want to say that, so two things. Number one, what and how would you recommend defending yourself in this battle as a human being and as a patriot? And I guess the second question is this idea of being able to separate yourself from this insanity if you feel that it's not really working out for you. So if I was a person, we get attacked every day for being conservative Druids. We are the largest, fastest Druid organization in the world. No one will ever admit that. No other Druid organization will admit that, because all of them have fallen upon themselves. All of those Druid organizations, they're all crumbling at the seams. They can't even get members to join because they are, it's all this, it's all this like wishy-washiness. Anything goes. Like, oh, you could be an atheist and be a Druid. When it was the Druids who were known and well known as mediators between God and man. So they're shooting themselves in their own feet, saying that, oh yeah, you could be this and be a Druid. It's the same thing they're doing to even our children today in schools. You know, when I was a kid and I heard my mom or dad saying to me, you know, you can be an astronaut when you grow up. You could be an engineer when you grow up. You could be an electrician when you grow up. You could be a doctor when you grow up. Well, today they're taking that future and putting it into people themselves and calling it gender. So, for example, if somebody feels like they want to be an alien, then they become alien gender. It, so so this so it really is this craziness. And so you know the Revolutionary War, we fought with muskets and bullets. We're not really doing that today. How would how would we defend ourselves as patriots against this sort of thing? You know, it, you don't need, you know, a rifle or I mean, we're certainly supportive of the Second Amendment. That's not what I mean. I mean that, you know, this war isn't right now at that point. You know, we're right at the point where we're forming basically the Declaration of Independence. That's where we're at right now. We're like, you know, it seems like just a few months away, and this thing is going to come down. And we're eventually going to have to I think we'll eventually have to physically fight. But at some point, you know, we have to defend ourselves already. So I'm sorry if I said a lot that kind of was mishmashed. If you can make any head or sense of that, whatever you want to say. Go
No,
ahead.
absolutely no. Well said. Um, I do want to touch a couple of those points. First, I believe that the infrastructure that Donald J. Trump has left behind and his defense and therefore efforts to restructure our militia will be the saving arm for America ever it need to get to that point. We have certain information and evidence of wrongdoing by those that are in place at the moment in time. We can only pray and hope that a lot of the investigations that have been led by special counsels and are ongoing by other prosecutors in the state of Utah continue to go on and find clear evidence of those that are trespassing against us. So I have not lost complete faith. I think the next election cycle, if we are able to defeat the oncoming attacks from the left, because they will strategically and administratively attempt to overtake the former president once over. But I think that if we continue on, we'll be victorious here. Um, Going back to the point of taxation and even like how we're so misrepresented. People nowadays don't understand how the spirituality or the definitive intelligence, the common sense, as we would say, how much of that goes forward in enhancing your personal experience as an American. You asked that first on your last take. How can we help and advise folks to walk away from this? And it's first and mostly um, to empower yourself. Self-esteem is the most important thing. As you see, redefined as mental health. Mental health is nothing more than self-esteem, but they don't want you regarding the self in esteem. They rather you consulting your own self, checking upon your health as if something is wrong, something is a disease, something is killing you, and we're giving how can I say formalized and formalized uh, corporative solutions towards health malignancies. So if I have mental health, I go to a doctor and see someone who should be able to help me. I get an SSID. A week later, I miss the pill one day, and all of a sudden, I want to kill my entire household. That is not soluble for any American family, especially bearing the financial cost of what it takes to stay on that regimen and what it took to see that doctor. And that's where a lot of what I have studied comes into play as well, where I see the unethical, persuasive format of our health system right now. We don't have honest healthcare whatsoever. It's all for money, academically, and what it's most of the employees, what they strive to attain, which is wealth, rather than, even if they say they're trying to help people, they have to eat too, and they go through strenuous training and expensive training to reach that. So seeing all of those points come together, we just see how degraded the system is and how it is working against us. But back to the formalizing self-esteem and regaining our definitions. If we, I have this very good book that when I was also a part of the Bernie Sanders train in hopes of, again, just self-satisfaction due to his policies that he was pushing on, fighting back against private student loans and federal student loans. Of course, I want someone that's going to free me of money and debt. But when that gentleman, without a fight, gave up a primary Super Tuesday selection with a coin toss, it opened my eyes clear, plain day, that they're selling each other out. They are coercing each other into positions of power. They are simply distracting, knowing well known and well strategized what they're actually doing. Because Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton agreed to winner takes all with the committee or the pact that the DNC had, which had already loaned funding to Hillary Clinton, which was the only way she was going to pay that back was with Bernie Sanders hands over his purse. And it happened to be true. But along that early journey into the Republican Party and the conservative system of value that is constitutionally correct in our country, I found this piece called The Triple Package by Amy Chua and Judd Rubenfeld. So now this teaches that each American should become equipped with these three things, which is superiority and insecurity in order to control their impulses. I believe that this is very strong as well in the sense of the narrative of Milton Friedman, who agrees with the two-party system in our country, but also agrees that we should be a capitalist, centrist-based fiscal system, and our economy should be based on free trade, free enterprise, and capitalism. Now, with the triple package, if each person, as many of the diaspora of cultures that come into America, they come with that go-getter movement, that New Yorker movement, where I'm going to make it to America, I'm going to make it big and accomplish that American dream. That is the sense of superiority that each person should have as being a part of our working body and country. Because with that, each individual is now esteemed. They're finding that self-esteem, they're finding that drive, they're finding their purpose and passion to achieve what others cannot, others will not attempt to, and even what them themselves possibly could not have seen. And that is the culture, the driving culture of America, but many have lost. Insecurity, but again, I want to quote from Hobbes, an author from 1651, who says, "Good and evil are nothing more than terms to denote an individual's appetite and desires, and their movement towards obtaining a goal." So many people have to observe that good and evil isn't defined by others in the status quo. Good and evil is a product of what you are reaping and will sow. So if we are insecure about the proper things, about putting food on our table, about enhancing our generational lineage, about pushing forward these legacies, then we will be successful in giving pride and in a goodful in the right way, in the righteous way, and also giving some breeding success, as opposed to being insecure in the sense of, oh, I'm not as beautiful as that person. Oh, I don't have those things. We don't need insecurity or also sensations that, um, because of our own actions, that we feel that impending doom because we know we did something wrong. So when we clearly are able to interject with other people's lives who are going through these motions of consequences of left of center and socialist ideas, which they're um, enhancing with their vote, we have to remind them where the mirror is. This is how basic I was when I was campaigning for myself. Most people, especially Hispanics like myself, need a subtle reminder as to why they immigrated to this country. And if they still believe in those values because whomever they voted for and whoever they are hearing about in the news daily is working against that. We need, most people nowadays, I say, cannot look at themselves in the mirror because they do not know what is there. And that is due to a lack of self-esteem and the, how can I say, the empowerment from the system towards the individual, pushing the individual to be an individual inside of the system and not out of the system, which is, again, the founding rationale behind America. Leaving the system, making it free and full of liberty for each individual. And again, this leftist ideology, which is now socialist, has become like a virus, a really bad idea that's like fire, and it's consuming any piece of oxygen that gives breath to its words.
Well,
and unfortunately, that is where we stand now. But we're fighting back, as you say, and we have to continue to educate others.
Before we go on, I want to read a couple comments actually from Nicholas Pasillo. We all know who that is. All right. So he says this. He says it's, I think he's talking about leftism, and he says it's all a facade. What do you say to that comment?
No, absolutely true. In every way, and again, it's like I could speak about this question for hours. It's everything. Um, and again, it even points back to the spiritual warfare. The devil can only tempt you, or in ways that I have understood what the evil realm or the underworld seems to project.
Speak your words, man. Speak whatever way it works for you. It's good.
The principles of Satanism are to drive certain individuals or all individuals away from God, which is righteousness and doing things the right way, even under stress or sacrifice. That makes us stronger, finding that purpose at the end of whatever tribulation we're going through. Now, the evil end, the opposite spectrum, is led by it's ruled, it's caged, but it can work within its own devious ways as well. But that is through temptation, and that temptation is there to drive you against yourself and what blessings you have at the end of the road. So it is all a facade. And we see that with the first rule that evil entity has is to lie and deceive. Many of our people are allowing themselves to be lied to and deceived. And they look up to and admire those that lie and persuade them into the wrong way. Now this has infiltrated every single thing that we have. Filming, the film industry, the music industry, the podcast industry. All forms of mass media have now been infiltrated by these sinful ways of temptation, where we are consuming and we are being fed dopamine by the most extraordinary occurrences. People that are just talking foul on the internet about genders for argument's sake, people that are saying hateful things. All of this, all of the mass media on television and the news tries to tell you not to do this, do it safe way. Let me put it into context a little bit easier. I live right above the city of Hoboken. Now, Hoboken is under a massive push of the prideful agenda into the children. Even as far as where they had a book reading of the banned books in in their central park in front of one of their public libraries. And see, now there's no problem with banning books, I believe. There's no problem with books that also point out towards sexuality, I believe. But we have to set a standard as to the age and a standard as to the format of consumption in the correct way. So in the 90s, I used to love my video game magazines because they would come with a disc. But at CVS or any of these pharmacy stores, Walmart, I would see the word Playboy. And everyone knew what Playboy was, even as a child. But they were always at the top where you couldn't reach. And they were always in a plastic sleeve.
Right.
So
they were unreachable.
My question is, to many of those that are fighting this quote-unquote don't say gay bill in Florida, which is not the purpose of that.
Crazy. Right. Absolutely.
And those that battle against this book rhetoric right now.
Yeah.
I would love to say to the public school library, can I check in this Playboy book? Or can next Saturday, can you please read Mein Kampf out loud to the entire public? There's a reason why books are banned. There's a reason as to why. Even if, although the left has also academically misconstrued this argument about abstinence versus knowledge, because now that is the war with our children. We can simply say, don't teach them about sex and tell them if it happens, protect yourself, seek help from an adult, or run away, because you have more value to make your decisions when you want. They were in my time in middle school, they were teaching girls, even if they say they love you, don't do it. Wait until marriage, at least, so you know.
Right.
Those principles are completely degraded. Now to the point where we are teaching children about sodomy because what? Like, it just doesn't. It's things that just don't make sense.
There's a lot of there. So the idea of sexualizing children is huge with leftism, right? They want that, right? They want to teach children about, they don't want to teach them about sexuality. They want to teach them about sex.
I actually want to make an argument there. Because this is actually something that I've been fighting hard against, and it's not for the sexual preference. It's not for the gender preference. It's the 5-dimensional chess that is being played here.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. My opponent in the legislature, which I ran against, Mr. Maherji, he's the largest author of past legislature in New Jersey. He's the deputy chairman and speaker. And he has introduced a bill for the last 3 years which pulls down the age of consent for medical assistance for minors from 16 to 13.
Wow.
See, that is where we find problems. And this is where I speak about the 5-dimensional chess. It's not about sexualizing the child. A child can become sexualized by purely experience. If a tree fell in the woods, would you hear it type of experience. The terrible thing that is happening is the individualization of every human and child so that the government can take them away from you.
That's the story behind the story.
It's destroying families,
sure,
the unit, so that it can destroy the patriotism, so that it can destroy the conservatism, so that it can destroy our entire fabric and redefine it. And that is what is happening here. And that's what hurts the most. Because once a kid believes anything, they will take it and run. And that's the damage, because we know how children are, and we are taking advantage of them at this rate in time where they're making consequential, life-changing, irrevocable decisions. And again, like I mentioned, this gentleman authors this bill in the legislature because certain things happen to children sometimes and they don't feel safe to tell the right people that they should be telling, so they should go to the doctor if the doctor sees something. No. That's not what is happening.
Right.
This is what's happening. The child goes to the school nurse because of what they heard in class or amongst their friends on social media, wherever the public square may be. They go to the nurse. The nurse now has authorization to tell the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor now has public funding grants given to the school to push for that same LGBTQI plus agenda. Now those children are sent to therapists without discretion to their parents. And those therapists now at times even give or recommend doctors who will also under the table to the parents give out SSIDs. These kids are confused, looking for help, then given drugs that make them dependent and suicidal and depressive. And this is what we are not seeing. We are voting for people that are killing our children effectively for US dollars that are coming from your pocket for the land that you live on. And this is why, again, tomorrow is so important. And in my political journey, the 3 words that stand out to me the most or 4 words: no taxation without representation.
I want to read you, I think Nick Pasillo said we need a Patriot podcast. And then John says, read Unintended Consequence by John Ross. Maybe you know that book. Okay.
Definitely check that out. Thank you, John.
Right. And then my only thing is, and again, this is from Nicholas Pasillo, my only thing is, what is the ultimate game? People are pinned against each other from the brainwashing media, but in reality, how can we ever band together as a nation? People have, hold on just a second, it's kind of hard to read here. People have already made the decision of what what and who they support. So he's, basically, and this is a really good point, and I bring this up all the time. The left are incredibly good at banding together. They're very good at social media. They can, even here in Philadelphia, you could be walking down the street and all of a sudden a mob will show up. And you don't know when or where it's going to happen. They're doing it now with these
bikes. Happened 2 days ago.
And Black Power organizations. How can we ever band together? And I think the answer to that question would be too long for a discussion here. But I think that is the question.
I have a quick answer. And again, those that are seeking those answers are not seeking. They're not seeking it for the right reasons. It is, and I don't want to take away from it either, because we see under those that are not political or apolitical, they don't want to see the politics. We know the problem. We're calling out what the solution is, but we're questioning how we got here. And that's where I go back, where I say the most efficient way for those like you and I who see these clear lines of division, who see the clear solution, and we're asking, how do we get more like us to sprout? And it's by the word of mouth. And sometimes we are stuck questioning and circling our problems, and we're not advocating for the agents of change. We can quickly change the entire thing that's happening to us if we simply got our friends and neighbors to vote, especially at city council level, especially on local level. If we were to band together, you would quickly discover how much alike you are to your neighbor, politically and morally, than ever. But what do we have? We have this, and we have the television remote, and we allow them to tell us what is right. So my answer to Nick is, we have to tell thy neighbor to shut off the television, and we have to just focus on common sense solutions. It doesn't have to be this big, extraordinary $1 million campaign or idea. We just have to be together, because if all of us are in our homes watching the television telling us what to do to be better, how is that logically, strategically logistically, how is that better than literally physically coming together with your community? And that is another thing. The sense of community now is so racially charged that whites are literally alienated from meeting together because they're scared that those minority groups will think they're constructing some type of deportation or what are like all of these words that have been I've told my white brethren that they are the most socially persecuted group at the moment in time, especially look at what's going on with the affirmative action. That should have never happened. My parents went through stages in their lives where they, as immigrants, they gradually earned much more income. By the time that I was of age for college, I did not receive help. I didn't get a handout. I have personal loans on my own bad decisions, and I now have the responsibility over it. I didn't get a handout to go to this Ivy League school because of my color, neither because of my sense of patriotism did I want to seek a Black Foundation scholarship or a Hispanic. I didn't want myself to stick out like a sore thumb. I am an American. I didn't do and perform to the best that I could because I'd rather be social. So now I chose to hold myself accountable and do things in the lane that I put myself in. But again, that's the few and far between. But all in all, as how Michael and Nick have said, we need to be the example. That is the only way that we win this battle, is by setting the example. And as you and I began on this on this talk tonight, the Gallup report shows exactly that. More socially bound persons are now going conservative. Why? Because they're now hitting the age of 30. They're now making over $50,000 and seeing a tax bill at the end of the year. They are now paying twice as much for electricity, rent, and utilities. They now have a short list of homes to choose from. They now have a short ambition on vacation spots. They're now afraid of the air that we breathe. So again, when will people walk away from a mountain of problems and find liberty and freedom? And I think only through people like you and I and those that know already the predicament we find ourselves in, we have to turn to hope, messaging, and bringing people away from that terribly degrading lifestyle. And we can each do that. Each one of us can have an impact. I know I've had many impacts on many individuals from other states that I never thought I would. And we see each other growing. So as long as we band together, we will grow out of this, or we will grow together somewhere else. But I truly believe that the 45th president of the United States has left a roadmap. And we see with the Supreme Court's decisions lately that what he left has left a great mark, and it continues to push the line forward for us. Now we have to push the line forward for him.
You know, I think, let me see here. Yes, is Michael Pallador, and he wrote a very long comment, but there's two things that he said that really struck out. Number one, America's greatest issue is that we are subconsciously teaching kids, adults to rely on acceptance, to be happy when the happiness basically is within. And then the second thing he says, exactly, and the second thing he says, which is really important, is not just simply, he brings out Pride Month being forced on us, but the left have this idea that they have to force their quote unquote values, which aren't values. You know, they're not values at all. It's a facade, right? That Nicholas talked about, but they have to force their stuff on us. You know, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, I walk through events and, you know, instead of seeing American flags, I see gay flags. And they're not even gay flags anymore. I don't know what flag it is. It's not the gay flag.
They have,
you know, a lot of people say, well, the pride,
they call it, for minorly attractive persons.
You know, and if you form that thing in 4 different ways, it forms the Nazi symbol. You know, so if you kind of take the flag and invert it here and invert it here,
Mhm.
you know, and go around with it, you'll see the Nazi symbol. So they are truly the Nazis, and I think that we are still fighting communism from World War II.
100%. It liquidated itself towards Brazil, and it has captured the world financially. And we see all of those connections if you know enough. And again, I point back to the triple package: who has it and who doesn't, and who uses it for the right and for the wrong. Superiority. Right now, the left leads with superiority because of their academic inflated self. Oh, we talk to this source. Oh, we trust this source only because it has been produced from students from this Ivy League, or the ACLU approves it, or the A or the J or what is it, the ADF has solicited against it or for this. Things like that, where again we are looking up to and taking regard from those that esteem themselves to be educated, but morally, we see that they're absolutely go against what they preach. And again, I put that up basically to the laziness of people, and it's because they're busy with their personal life for whichever reason it may be, but they are also adding to their own demise because if they knew better, they would do better. And again, like
We
even how
talked,
Michael says,
yeah, yeah.
mhm, even how Michael says,
We
it is sad for.
go ahead.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead. You
No,
can
no,
go
no.
ahead.
You
You
can
can go
read
ahead.
it. Go ahead. You can read it. Go
But yeah,
ahead. You
Mike
can read
says
it.
it's sad that it takes something from like 9/11 to happen. And again, we were actually at a great place before 9/11 happened. And what 9/11 actually has done, it has put us in this very position now because our government has so much power. It was inflated to such a degree that now they have control to the micro level of data and surveillance, where we now see terrible repercussions. And politically speaking, the actions of 9/11 could have been stopped, and if you pay attention, those same actors are still in play, and they are working harder against you more than ever.
You know, we talked a little bit, and we're going to end soon, but I want to bring up one thing you said, you know, and that is the acknowledgement that we as minorities could actually say and support, you know, say our Christian brothers and sisters. I mean, we're pagans, right? But the thing about it is they're not only attacking Christians, the Bible, the dogma that goes with it. And they're not attacking pagans with our mythology and our folklore. All right, they're really what they're attacking are, you know, specific the you said the nuclear family. They're attacking a sense of normalcy. Um, and again, I always go back to divine providence and natural law. You know, and those that's what govern us. That's what governs us all. You know, and I think that it's important and relatively, you know, important to bring up this idea that yes, we could say as minorities that, you know, white Christian men are being destroyed today. We could say as minorities that Druids, conservative Druids mostly, are being destroyed today, or pagans. You know, we could say that, you know, me as a gay guy could say, you know, straight men or straight people are being destroyed today. And this is what they're going after. And we talked earlier, we had a side conversation. We talked about the WEF and this idea of depopulation. Are they really trying to just stop it? You know, are they trying to end us? Are they and bring us into a world where, yeah, people that love it. I mean, I was talking to somebody and he said to me, he said, you know, man, you should use VR for your you could get thousands of people on your platform, and just thousands of people on your platform, you could do it. Just put. I refuse to put the VR on, not because I don't want to play a video game or something like that. I'm talking about where the world we live in is no longer real. It really is. Plato, you brought out Plato's Republic, and he brings out this idea that there's the real world, the things we see right now, and then there's the really real world, which is part of something called the theory of forms, which is sort of like the world beyond. But when we talk about what's real, we talk about things that we can see that are tangible that they want to upset by saying you don't need these anymore. Just put on the VR glasses and everything's going to be cool. So if they're able to control the AI in a way where they're able to really control us, there was a Sliders episode. Now, you might not know Sliders, you're a little young, but Sliders was this idea that they went through this portal, through this interdimensional portal, where they would go to the same Earth, it's the same time, it's the same year, but Sliders would say, well, yes, but because of choices, this is what occurs. Sliders, by far, has been the only sci-fi episode that I've ever watched that has actually predicted everything we're going through today, including things like there's a world where everybody's wearing VR. And this was back in the early 90s, I guess, whatever it was, maybe early 90s, 80s, right? 90s. And so there was a world where everybody had COVID, where everybody was wearing masks and was afraid to get within a certain amount of feet with each other. I mean, there's a world where the United States Constitution doesn't exist. So there's a world where slavery is reversed. And so they really went into this in almost every episode that predicted everything we're seeing today. So I think there's still some conservative writers out there that are saying, look, guys, this is really going to happen. So please, they're begging us. I think some media outlets, I'm not talking about Netflix originals or Hulu originals. I'm talking about those 90s, 80s shows that really forecast a lot of what we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like pretty much a wrap a lot of things up too. Like we spoke personally as well. I want to go on to say like a lot of this too comes from essentialism versus constructivism, where conservatives and people to the right mostly do lean to essentialism, where we use what we have to make the best of and to continue going forward. Whereas to constructivists look to create something, to aid something, and save it. But they don't realize that what they're putting into the system is artificial and it's going to alter other natural things. And connecting that form of thinking to the Plato ideal of forms is exactly what we are talking about. We have all of these topics are subsystems, and they're strategically marketed towards with branding from the Democratic Party and from that leftist ideology that is straining down from the World Economic Forum. We see all of this depopulation occurring in forms of changing dieting, changing the way that healthcare is performed, changing the way that cost is managed over healthcare, and also over our agricultural industry. We can see that also in the financial system. We can also see this in the system of nations and religions, where they're trying to funnel us all into one thing. But again, even going back to like the cultures, America, when we found it, right, Ellis Island, we called it a melting pot where every culture can come, be free, and empower itself and continue on. But now, with the drive, how I've said, and you've mentioned, with the depopulation, that is the end goal. The elite want to rule over us because they see its properties, but they're confusing us into thinking that they are our friend. But what we don't know is that we're handing ourselves over and selling our own selves out. And how you mentioned right there at the end, what you last spoke of, just lost my train of thought.
Uh,
But
I, sometimes
basically,
I say stuff and I
the
totally
movies,
forget.
the movies,
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
movies.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of my first awakenings, The Matrix. I can see, and the Matrix, followed by Inception, tremendous movies that have fueled me and taught me in ways that I've never really saw. Inception, the fact that something could enter your mind, and the most poisonous thing that could enter your mind is an idea if you believe it. So they would go into people's dreams and make them believe things that would change their mind on what they would do. That is such a metaphor as to what is happening now and what we allow in our mind and how we push it out afterwards. And I wanted to ask you if you ever saw John Carpenter's movie, They Live.
No, I haven't,
So
but I'll watch it. Go ahead.
they, it's this guy. I forget his name. He's a pretty famous actor. Um, but basically, he finds sunglasses. When he puts on sunglasses, the billboards tell the truth. It says obey, obey. Eat, smoke this and you'll die in 10 years.
That's where we get that whole obey from. Those obey
It's
memes. Yeah.
it is all about control at the end of the day. And we are allowing constructivist forms of thinking, people that believe they can create a better world. We're believing them. But what we don't know is that behind closed doors, they see the world a better place without us. And those are the answers to Nick and Mike's question, if they ever seek and find that far. But there is a certain group led by Carl Schwab, who, again, they want you to believe that they're donating all of their funding to charity, but what that charity is doing is then funding the people that are working against you. And
Yes.
that's the cleanest way to see the truth. Find out who these Democrats are being funded by and who. And the problem with the Republican Party is that they work on a system of favor still. Very mafioso. If you do for me, I do for you. Instead of being statesmen, instead of over politicians, and they actually serve the people. And again, what the founders set forth for us, if we can wrap up here, I guess, the Federalists were all younger than 27 years old.
Wow.
And they all wished, and they set a 2-term limit because they wished for the ruling body of the Republic to remain young in mind and spirit and passion. Now we have a whole bunch of career politicians who do nothing but double dip for their own pockets for as long as they can. And I believe that is also one of the root sources as to why we're in the predicament that we are. So we need young, passionate, knowledgeable, morally God-fearing men and women and children to be activated, to push in this search for truth, and to continue to, how can I say, market and message just as hard as the Democrats do, but without a cost, for free, for the love of thy neighbor and hope for a better future, and in pursuit of our everlasting freedom. But Druid, I really feel that we can win this war, but it's going to take a lot more of us, and our voices is growing. It's growing because the Gallup and surveys tell us that more people are coming to our side. But I think it's a battle of the time, and it's going to be interesting to see how things develop in the next year or so.
Well, thank you so much, Marcos, for talking to us tonight. I'm going to give you one final word, and then we'll land it. What is your message to everybody on the Druid Circle? What is your ray of hope? What is your ray of light or sunshine to everybody here that are struggling through these times? That tomorrow is Independence Day. what would you say to everybody here, all our Druids, conservatives, obviously? Um, what would your message be to
No,
us?
I really appreciate a lot of the things that you've taught me about the Druid community, and how it goes against the neo-paganism and all of these characteristics that are being lifted upon those that are righteously following that practice. But no, to all the Druids, again, as you are defined to be the messengers between gods and others that are in human form, we have to do exactly that. I think the most godly message that we can push onto human souls and entities are that we all serve a higher purpose. We are a larger cog in the wheel of all of our primal existence, farther than we understand and know. Even if we try to seek, we will not understand that we do not know all that we do not know. That famous quote that the person that knows is the one that knows less, or that
Yeah.
knows nothing at all. And we have to, again, abide by what history has taught us. So to seek of knowledge and understanding, and to be less ignorant over any subculture or culture, while again not taking dogmatic differences personal. I believe that is the best position that each individual can place himself in, as well as fortifying and being fruitful to thyself, making sure that your steam is checked and that you're doing things for the right purposes. So I think the Druids just continue seek of knowledge from a spiritual alley that is going to lead you in a righteous way, and preach that good news to others that there's hope and faith that we can all come together and realize a better future.
Awesome. What a wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Marcos,
What a pleasure.
for spending time with us tonight. Wow, we did almost 2 hours, man.
And we could do more. We could do a
I
whole day,
know, I
but
know.
I hope this gets
We'll save it
out
for
to a lot
another
of people.
time. We'll have a part two. We'd love to have
Absolutely.
you come back on, and talk more, and we will. We'll arrange for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
People
thank you
far and
again.
wide.
Happy
Absolutely.
Independence Day, and to you and yours and our family, and just as we say, one of the things that St. Patrick would say would be that the Druids always ended their rituals, their practices with the repetition of two things, and it would be it thus, be it thus. And it's sort of equivalent to amen, amen, and or so be it, so be it. But they said it twice, and that's kind of notable, I think. That's what we did tonight. We brought about change just by expressing ideas, sharing those ideas, and we'll see. We're going to have a lot of people watch this. They might not be watching
Yes.
now, but they will replay this.
Yes.
And
Please share far and wide. Continue to help Druid grow. You're doing a tremendous job, and I hope this is gratifying to the Druid circle.
thank you so much, Marcos. Have a good night.
Likewise.
So, everybody, there we go. We had it from Marcos D. Marte, an astounding individual. What a wonderful, we talk a lot here on the Druid Circle about the Druidic tetrachonomy. We stand clearly against St. Augustine on the idea that the body is just body, body, spirit, and soul. We say that the Druidic tetrachonomy leads us to have a sacred heart, a beautiful mind, a good soul, and a Holy Spirit. And that man that we just spoke to tonight has such a tremendous Druidic tetrachonomy. You could see it just pouring out. And you see spiritual radiation, in everyone you meet, whether or not it's a dark radiation or a light radiation, you see it. And I think that we, as practicing Druids, conservative Druids, and others that are on the Druid Circle, I mean, we have a lot of people on the Druid Circle that aren't even Druid. They're practicing Catholics, they're Christians, they're pagans, they're witches, they're Buddhists, they're Hindu. We have Jews and conservative Muslims. We have everyone on our page, and I think that that's really what intimidates the opposition, what intimidates the idea, the cause that leftism wants. And I think that in that we remain strong, and like Marcos talked about, we remain confident. There's a passage that says we must be steadfast in our faith. We must be steadfast in our belief. And if we aren't true to the Constitution of the United States, or in those countries that don't have a constitution but have the same ideals as we do here in the United States, then we will have what it takes to come that time when it comes to saying, it's time to defend our values. It's time to defend our traditions. It's time to defend those timeless myths that made us who we are today. Remember this. Remember that you are the product. You are the product. You are the product of generations of survivors. And as a survivor, we will not only survive this, but we will thrive when it comes time. So know that. And as always, I come to you as Druid Nicholas Declan, founder of the Druid Circle, founder of the Druid Order of Blessed Stone and Wood. That's BLEST, Stone and Wood, and Druid University, along with Druid Living, a conservative pagan media outlet. Thank you for watching tonight. Happy Independence Day, and Gita Awen.